What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It is podcast number 117. As ever, I'm your host, George Ledger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. Now, we're coming up quickly now to the end of the regular season. That also means that the playoffs are just around the corner, but that does mean that we get to run through our predictions that we went back and had a look at some of the awards. I don't think we'll spend too long on that one. And also tell you and run through our all NBA selections that we've got for first team, second team, and third team. But as ever, like we always do, chaps, how are you doing? Are you well? Are you good? Louis, you look really excited to go into this one.
I got spanked by Newcastle. I'm doing good.
I'm excited for all NBA. I like all NBA. Nice little snapshot of the season. I think you can kind of put that as a window of the 15 best players of the season. The big awards, as we talked about last week, the MVP type of thing and everything, it's gone to a point where it's a bit of a pointless discussion for a lot of people. But, we're settling into a few things now. So, and I'm looking forward to the playoffs more than anything else.
Good. Right, well, what we're going to do, I know that the collective bargaining agreement that came through the other day has said that going forward for next season, that the All-NBA selections are going to be positionless and that you also have to play 65 games minimum to be eligible for them. We're not going to do that this year. We're not going to take that into consideration. We're going to go with the classic structure of the two guards, the two forwards, and the centre. We're not going to have some sort of jiggery-pokery going on as who we're going to pick and who not. We're just going to run it through that with the classic first team, second team, and third team. We're not going to do we're going to obviously have a talk about it and chat through who we all think should be in what teams and whatnot. But we're going to go for one collective Swingman Pod Happy Family All NBA selection. I think we start from the first team and we work our way down. I think that's the smartest way to do it. So we'll go with the center position. I'd say that's the juicy one here. Are you leaning on the side of Joel Embiid or are you leaning on the side of Nikola Jokic for that first team All NBA center spot? Lewis Howard, I'm going to you.
Right. Well, I remember this exact conversation last year, and George, you got outvoted. But you'll be happy to know you're not going to get outvoted this year because I'm actually going to give the nod to Embiid. I've said before, when it comes to their actual game, I probably prefer Jokic's game more. But I think this year, with the defense him and Philly have had this season, the fact that he's leading the league in scoring again, and there's quite a bit of a difference in those points between the two now. I'd give the nod to Embiid, but it's the same as last year. It's a toss-up either way. You want to go one or the other, that's fine with me, but Embiid's my preference for this season.
Louis Halpin, what are you saying?
Yeah, so when we say this, we're basically revealing who our MVP pick is as well. If we're kind of ruling out Giannis in that type of conversation, which I think I am really. I don't think with Giannis, I just don't think he's had that type of dominant performance that you can sort of point to. He's been really good across the whole season. But on both sides of the floor as well. And his team's obviously really good as well. So it seems a bit strange not to have him in this conversation at all, but I don't really. It's between these two. I'm with the both of you. I think but all of us can kind of agree we wouldn't really mind two-way if it went either of the two. I've gone for Jokic in my first team All NBA. It's a bit of a toss-up.
So your pick would be Jokic?
Yeah, my pick would be Jokic, but I'm outvoted, so that doesn't really particularly matter too much.
You don't know, Louis.
I never know. You never know. I will say I was unconventionally, not unconventionally, it's not the right word. I was probably a bit too annoyed by the fact that Embiid did duck the game last week. That did actually, I think that would have been quite a nice little window into the conversation a little bit. Maybe it could have been the time to settle a few debates. I know they played a couple months ago and Embiid played really well, but little things like that annoy me slightly. And Jokic has played more games. I think overall he has a more direct impact on his team's success because he's by far the best player on that team. Whereas, James Harden's been magnificent this season. I don't like to take it away if you've got good teammates, but it's kind of how it is sometimes. So, yeah, either way I'd be happy, but I went for Jokic on this one.
Yeah, actually, Lewis Howard, I'm going to agree with... No, I'm not going to agree with Louis. I'm definitely agreeing with you. It's Joel Embiid is going to be my pick. He's also my pick for MVP. It's more of... It shouldn't play into it as well. I couldn't moan if Jokic got it again, but it's more of that I think that this season... I think it would be tragic if Embiid got nothing across the 3 seasons for it. You shouldn't do it like that. That is also how I see it. And also the thing with him ducking it, yeah, I agree, it didn't look great. But then Jokic just missed 3 or 4 games since that anyway, so it goes part and parcel with it. They're going to start shutting these guys down to sort of put them in bubble wrap towards the playoffs. But Embiid will be my pick. Moving on, so Embiid is in the center spot for our first team. So we've got 2 forwards now. I think we can all agree Giannis Antetokounmpo takes one of these spots.
Yep. Yeah, obviously best player in the NBA. So even if he's not my MVP, he's best player.
I'll chalk Giannis up into one of these slots. Who is getting the other forward spot? Louis Halpin, I'm going to you.
Jason Tatum's getting the other spot. Been a bit rough since the All-Star break. I think we would all agree. Some great moments, but some kind of filled in with largely patchy stuff where Jaylen Brown's kind of had to carry the team a little bit, and they've not been very good since the All-Star break. But I think before that, we would all agree he was in MVP contention, really. Bit annoying as he was my surprise MVP pick from before the season. So yeah, fantastic offensively. I think career high in points. But Boston could theoretically get the first seed as well if things play out like they want it to. I don't expect that to happen, but there's as much as they've had some struggles over the recent months or so, that they've been one of the best teams in the NBA this season, and he's the best player on there. So that would be kind of chalked in for me as well. Permanent ink, shall we say? A bit of a Sharpie on Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty straightforward as well. I'd also go for Tatum. If Kevin Durant had played like a full season, then maybe it would be a bit more of a question, because obviously KD's been lights out whenever he's played, but he just hasn't played enough games compared to Tatum, who did enough, as you say, during that stretch where he was, I think he was a front runner for MVP at one point for a decent chunk of time, so he'd get my nod.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with Jason Tatum as first team. Like we mentioned, he's not been as good after All-Star break, but I can't have any qualms. Right, now the bit where it gets harder, shall we say, is the guard positions and who do you leave out for the first team. I think one of the ones that we can all agree would be a Luka Doncic, and then the other guard position is a bit harder to pick, is what I would say. So I'll put. Do either of you disagree with a Luka in first team?
No, Luka's a lot, but it's mad when you think about the new rules they're going to be putting in for next season. If that would have been in place this year, the amount of guards that are going to miss out, that wouldn't miss out this season, is actually insane. There's some huge names that aren't going to be in first, second, or third that definitely you could make the case for easily.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll put Luka down. Who's the other guard that you would have then, Lewis Howard?
I went back and forth on this, to be honest, and it's a case of where you give, what area you give more weight to, whether it's the individual performance, the team performance, how good the actual player is himself, and which one you take. Maybe you just kind of got to put them all together and decide what your preference is with them. In the end, I just went with Steph. I think he's probably the safest pick of the bunch you could choose from. It just came down to, I looked at all these players, and these were some spoilers for some next ones, obviously, but I was looking at SGA, I was looking at Lillard, Booker. There's so many to choose from, but Steph's had a good season. Obviously, the Warriors haven't had as great a season as they want to have, but they're still in the playoffs currently. I know there's quite a few games to play, and they might go up or down a couple of places, but in the end, I just decided, Steph's the best guard of this bunch. He's had a very good season, so I'll put him in.
Louis Halpin, who would you have?
Yeah, see, this is where the variation really comes in, because I do have Steph at some stage, but he's not in my first team. I actually went for someone you didn't mention in that little list there. I went for Donovan Mitchell. And I think there's, that all those players you mentioned and more have arguments to get into that first team. I just think I look at all NBA is quite, one of the ways I can kind of classify it is who's had like a memorable season. When you go back, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that season. And this is obviously Donovan Mitchell's first season for the Cavs. They were a good team before he came, and now they are, home court advantage, like solid team. You wouldn't put them as sort of real championship contenders, but they're on the brink, you'd say, or on the very fringes of that. And he is the most notable, or the only real notable addition to that team. Has some dodgy moments every now and then. He does like his hero ball, but I just think in terms of like overall additional impact, in terms of you can measure it. He wasn't there last year. He's there this year, and now they're a much better side. So I went for him personally, but I'm not going to disagree too much with Steph as he's on there on my list later on, and he's had like a classic Steph season. Hasn't missed too many games, as I was quite surprised by actually. So yeah, I went for Spider.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that thinking of all NBA as maybe a culmination of the story of the season and picking players with that, because that can make the difference between, say, like a De'Aaron Fox making it into one of these teams or not. If you think, you got to have some Kings contingent in it, whether it's one or two players. So that is something that definitely factors in.
So I didn't have Steph down as my sort of first pick, but I also didn't have Donovan Mitchell in my first ones. I was more trending towards, and I think I may be looking at it towards the sort of earlier stage of the season rather than the latter stages. I can't discredit how good SGA has been this year. Discrediting is coming down to if I was going to put him in the second or the first team for me. But I did also, he was the choice. I had Luka as a lock, but it was between SGA and Donovan Mitchell in terms of who I was going to move into that other guard position. So on that premise, I will also back Donovan Mitchell to make first team All NBA. I can't hate if Steph made it as well, but I think I'm just going to, I use it as the argument as well as that from the Cavs side of things, I'm more impressed with what they've done this year than what the Warriors have done, primarily also because of how bad the Warriors have been away. So I'll roll with Donovan Mitchell. So that will be our lock for first team All NBA of Donovan Mitchell, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid.
You could argue if the Mavs missed the playoffs, you could argue against Luka Doncic in first team. I'm not going to personally. He was in my first team, but there is the argument to be had there because that's pretty disappointing. I know that his supporting cast isn't great. It's not an absolute pittance like what the Lakers had earlier on in this season type of thing. I think they should be better than where they are, he's part of that at the very least. But I put him first team regardless, just because the stats are insane.
Indeed. All right, we'll move on to second team then. We will throw Jokic into centre there because that's just no debate because of how close it was for the first team. I think now the second team, there is general variance. We're not going to agree on all of these spots, but we're going to have to find a lovely little settled commute between us. Considering we was talking about guards just a minute ago, we will go back to guards and we'll start there from this sense. Lewis Howard, give me your two picks for the guard spot. I want to hear both of them, and I want to hear your reasons why.
Obviously, Steph, I said I had in my first, so it did be in my second team because we haven't got him in the first team. I've already said the reasons for all of that, so I'll leave that one out. The second one is tough. It is really tough because it's probably for me between SGA, Lillard, and Booker, and that. It's like Lillard's, if you look at the individual stats, Lillard's probably got the best, but he's also on the worst team. And then Booker's probably got the worst individually, which isn't saying, he's still averaging 28 points per game and he's on the best team. And then SGA is kind of like the in-between. So it's almost what you prefer, maybe an eye test. I think I'll give the nod to SGA, though. I really have liked watching him play this season. So just with a bit of bias thrown in, I'll give it to him.
Louis Halpin, who are your two picks in the guard positions and your reasons for it?
We'll have SGA and Sharpies. I've got him in my second team and you had him in your first. So Lewis has him in second. Makes sense. I think like you said earlier months of his scoring, I think he's still over 30 points. It's just ridiculous because that team shouldn't really be in a playing situation. They are at this moment in time. Obviously, their big draft pick this season got injured in the summer. And he's had to do a lot of carrying on that team. And, they've got some good, solid players, but no one outstanding alongside him. And in that way, it's kind of a more impressive season than what Luka's put together a little bit when you think of it in terms of a team success type of thing. Just an outstanding player, and he's going to be pretty important in the years to come. Second team, I actually had De'Aaron Fox as my second guard in this one. As you mentioned, I do think you need some Kings contingency, and we'll have another Kings player in there because of the way the positions stack up and everything like that, obviously. But I feel like if we were to do top 5 MVPs, like, ranking them and everything, I think De'Aaron Fox might squeak it into my 5th place. I think there's arguments for who's the most influential player on that team, but his clutch scoring is just unbelievable. And they are the best offense in the league. He's kind of dictating a lot of that. And yeah, I just think in terms of those names you mentioned, it's just more of an impressive season and more of a memorable season for me, definitely. Lillard, stats wise, unbelievable. But like you said, team's poor. Not played a load of games. He's been shut down effectively for the season. I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing for another team next year as well. Booker as well. He had a long stretch out of injury. They've been a bit disappointing the whole season. I don't have either of those on any of my teams. I'll spoil it, but yeah, I went for De'Aaron Fox in that one. So it's kind of down to George, I guess. Here, really. Do we have? Okay, because Steph is another wild card we have to kind of throw in there a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, I think SGA is definitely a lock for one of these spots, is what I'll say. SGA is definitely in. And then, so who was your second pick, Lewis?
That was Steph. I had him in my first, so he's going to be in this.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, I mean, it does, so if that's the case, then Steph Curry takes the second spot in this team then without really any debate, which is mad from how we're going because of how well Damian Lillard's been this year that he's not in either of them is how we're going to run through this. But yeah,
the people that are missing
I can't hate Steph Curry in it as well.
Yeah, the people that are missing out is crazy. Like Louis said, and yeah, I know he spoiled it a little bit for himself. I won't say mine yet, but he didn't have Booker, who's probably the best player, or has been the best player of the season, because obviously KD joined late on the fourth seed in the West.
Yeah.
And he's not going to have him first, second, or third. Like the level of play from the guards this year, in terms of the depth of it, has to be one of the best it's been ever in the NBA.
Yeah, there's other, like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about Jalen Brunson as well. He's been really like similar type of Donovan Mitchell. He wasn't there last year. He is this year, and look at where they are. And I also thought about Drew Holiday quite a lot as well. So, there's some real competition here. It's no sort of shame in coming off a bit, I guess.
No, definitely no shame at all.
Apart from the 200 million, you'll probably lose, but
yeah, there is also that. That's the more mad thing when it comes into the actual when these awards will be given out. Who does miss out big time on the money one? Everyone will remember the Klay Thompson one a few years back.
Never made
press
it,
conference, and rightly so. And rightly so. In terms of the two forward spots, now this is where it's going to get very interesting, I would say as well. I don't know if we're going to get more dynamic picks that will go across each other here, but Louis Halpin, I'll go back to you first off. Who do you have as your two forward spots?
Small forward, I guess it doesn't really matter, but James Butler. You call him James sometimes, Jimmy Butler. Kind of under the radar season for Jimmy. I think he didn't make All-Star, which surprised me because he's kind of had just like a Jimmy Butler type of season. Hasn't missed that many games. I know the Heat are absolutely putrid to watch. Don't get me wrong, I don't like watching the Miami Heat on any level, but he's been really good, both ends of the floor as per. He carries that team on offense, truly. So I don't see why he wouldn't be in there. My second one, I've got the New York Knicks hoodie on. The second All-NBA for me for Julius Randle in 3 years, which is pretty mad considering the season he had last year and how his relationship with the fans deteriorated. Now it's come back. But, we talk about sort of dominant or memorable performances. I remember him absolutely busting my beloved Minnesota Timberwolves a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, this guy's got it again. He's still got that hero ball gene. I can still see him bottling it a little bit in the playoffs, but we're talking regular season. He's been really, really good for them, so they need a bit of representation here. So yeah, Julius Randle for me.
All right. I would be interested to hear your reasons as to why KD is not in your second team, and if it's anything other than hasn't played enough games, I think you're just a bit mental because he's only played 45 games. So if that's your reasoning, then I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's why he's not on any of my teams.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say because in terms of actual level of play, he has an argument. If he'd have played enough games, obviously he hasn't to be in the first team, but he's in my second team purely because just when it comes down to the level of play this season, even if he's only played 45 games, it's just better than almost all the other forwards in the league. So I had to put him in. And then the other one's difficult because I was going back and forth between Julius Randle, who I think has to have some sort of representation in here, especially because I do think the Knicks should probably have at least one player in. And then I was thinking about Jaylen Brown as well. I know he's played forward from the majority of the season. I don't have the numbers, but he definitely has. So I would put him as a forward.
He's a forward. If he wasn't a forward, I'd have had him as argument as the guard, but I would class him as a forward this year, purely because of sort of Derek White, Marcus Smart, and that sort of team.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd probably be between them two for the second position for me, and I think I'd lean towards Julius Randle just because of the expectations for the Knicks this year. I think that even though they had a great season last season, I think they've surpassed what people thought they were going to be playing at in terms of their level of play. So, and even in the playoffs, I think people look at them now as a team, that could give someone an upset. So I'll give Julius Randle the nod.
I mean, my two picks were Julius Randle and Jaylen Brown for second team. Primarily, I understand the Kevin Durant argument, but it literally is he has not played enough games for me anywhere near to be sort of focused. I can see an argument, and I could probably put him in a third team slot, maybe. That was my deliberation process, as if KD would make the third team for me in my head. But I can't look past what Julius Randle's done this year, and I can't look past what Jaylen Brown's done, especially post All-Star. Because Jaylen Brown has been better than Jason Tatum post All-Star. I don't think there's a debate in that one. He has been, when Jason Tatum, they've had sort of one night, one of them will go off, the other night, the other one goes off. That's what they've really been doing. You rarely see them both have magical games at the same time, but that's what makes them two so good. Jaylen Brown's also in that stage right now where he feels he's being not disrespected, but isn't given sort of the due credit that he should be getting in this Celtics team for doing what he's done. There's all this sort of smoke and mirrors around if he's going to stay next year and sign on and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good idea for him to stay, and I think he should be in the second team for All NBA.
So we're a bit of an impasse here, aren't we?
Well, what I would say is that an easy way to solve this is if you're going to do the KD hasn't played enough games argument, I don't think it's a case where you can say, all right, he hasn't played enough games, so we'll move him from the second to the third. I think you have to be pretty concrete with it and say he's either played enough games and so you put him in it, or you don't think he's met the threshold for you personally and you don't put him in it at all. So I don't think it makes sense to put him in, for example, like a third team if his level of play has been better than the other people above him, but he hasn't met the amount of games. I think it's a case of either you have him in or you don't. So if we want to not have KD on that basis, then I'd say just go with
he's barely scratched over half the amount of games played. He's on 45, like you said. I don't think he will be on it. When it comes out, he will not be on it. I'm pretty confident in saying that. So I think,
to be honest, I think that makes it kind of easier as well, because when it comes to the third team of the forwards, I think you then got to think about LeBron maybe. But if you exclude him for the same reasons as KD, then that might make things a bit easier. So if that's the case, then I guess it's me to decide whether it's Jaylen Brown or Jimmy Butler for this next position. I said I was debating with Jaylen Brown, so I'd give the nod to Jaylen Brown.
Right, so to confirm then, our second team All-NBA is SGA and Steph Curry in the guard spots, Jaylen Brown and Julius Randle in the forward spots, and Nikola Jokic at the center position. Yeah, all happy with that? We're smashing this one. We're smashing this one. Right. Well, do you know what? I think center position as well for the third team is not a lock, but I'd say we'd all... it's Sabonis, right? We're going to throw Sabonis. Is there anyone else that you can toy with?
I will say quickly, my laptop's about to die, so I'll be 2 seconds.
Oh, no worries. I thought he was going to drop a bomb on who he should rather be having a centre there.
I mean, Bam's had a season.
I've seen a couple of things. Yeah, and I've seen a couple of things where people have messed around with it a bit and put Sabonis in at a forward position so they can get another centre in. But there's no debating where he's played this year, so I think you have to have Sabonis at centre. But as you say, Bam's a shout. I mean, I've even seen a few, because I had a look at what some people would put in. I saw a few rogue Anthony Davis shouts, but for me, I don't think you can argue with Embiid, Jokic, Sabonis for the three. It's just what order you've got Embiid and Jokic in.
Yeah. You could also maybe throw in potential defensive player of the year, Brook Lopez in there. I wouldn't do, but just a shout. I think Sabonis' impact on that Kings team is just, like we said, he came halfway through the season. They've managed to sort it out. everything does go through him, even if he's not like the top scorer, even if Fox is getting all the buckets during clutch time, shall we say. He has to be on there somewhere because he's just been so great for them. And they snapped the streak. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that in terms of how the Kings have been this season, I think both Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox should be in any of these sort of. They're not going to make first team. You can make the argument for maybe De'Aaron Fox in the second team, but I think third team Sabonis and Fox should both be in it primarily because of how there is the story that comes with it of how everyone this season had their sort of estimations on where the Kings would finish and what they've done. They are the biggest overachievers out of anyone in the NBA, and I think they deserve their flowers in it in some respects in this way. So do you all agree that De'Aaron Fox would be a guard in the third team?
Yeah, I mean, I had him on my second team.
Yeah,
so
I think push comes to shove, I would, but it's so tough because leaving out one out of Booker, I mean, we might as well go on to this now. Leaving out one of either Booker, Lillard, Harden, or Morant. Sorry, only having one out of Lillard, Booker, Harden, or Morant is mental because they've all played so well this year. And as I say, if it wasn't positionless, or if it was positionless, then a few of them definitely would have made it. So I'll be interested to hear who you guys give the nod to in that regard.
For me, the way I can do this on the elimination stage, it's mental to say it, but I can't put Damian Lillard in any of these teams. I get that it's sort of player-specific awards. I can't have him in it when they're the fourth or third worst team in the entire NBA. That's my sort of. They are near on records with the Charlotte Hornets, so I can't look at Damian Lillard in that regard for it.
Yeah, 32 points a game though. Leaving him out 32 points,
mad.
32,
mad.
7 and 5 is crazy.
It's mad. But you can then argue the reason he's got this is part and parcel of why the Blazers are also so bad. I know they've got terrible players around him in that regard, but he's getting these stats because every game he is their only option for it. So there is that factor that comes into it.
It's similar to what Brad Beal used to kind of does every season, if I'm quite honest. Damian Lillard's a far better player. Let's not get this wrong, but it's the same sort of argument, really.
There's going to be upset on whoever you pick.
The tough thing is when I look at, say, the four I just named, and I said to you, who's the best player out of those four? I'm pretty confident everyone here is saying Lillard.
Close.
Yeah,
it's close.
It's close. Yeah, it's close.
But this is where it comes into it. If you was going to say who's the MVP of the league, it's not Giannis.
It's like Giannis
he's the best player in basketball. So it's.
I mean, I'm saying this. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here because I also wouldn't have picked Lillard for my third team in the final spot.
I mean, this could be quickly settled.
We'll scrap Lillard then.
Yeah, can it not be sort of quickly settled by just naming who we each have at this stage? Because you've got.
All right. Yeah, I've got Booker as my third one.
Yeah, I've got James Harden personally.
Dear. Right. So I'll be the deciding pick then, because I was looking at. I haven't literally on my page. All I had was De'Aaron Fox. I haven't got my pick on the second guard spot. I was going to listen to your two arguments and go from there. So do you know what? We're going to keep this podcast sort of short and sweet for this one. We're only going to run for our NBA selections. Lewis, tell me your reasons why you picked Booker over a James Harden.
I mean, it's tough because once again, I'm going to advocate Harden a little bit here. Philly are they're not the better team. Now that Kevin Durant say they're not, but throughout the season, they've been the better team. They're obviously a higher seed, got more wins in the East. Embiid's in the team already, obviously. We've got no Suns contingency at the moment. And that might be because of where we thought they'd be this year versus where they've actually ended up. But they're still the full seed in the West. Devin Booker's still putting up monster stats, and he's been their best player, obviously, because Kevin Durant hasn't been there for that whole period of time. So that's why I'd give him the nod, because he's been the best player on that team, not including Kevin Durant, the asterisks there. Whereas obviously for Harden and Embiid's been the best player on that Phillies team. But yeah, when you say advocate for him, I'm not going to advocate that strongly because I would be more than happy to have Harden in anyway. So
All right, Louis, why did you pick James Harden then out of interest?
I think I saw it as like a really good sort of recovery season for him because I think his stock had been a bit on the downfall, I'd say, since, well, he had one really good season at the Nets before he got injured, and then the last season was just a bit of a mess, as it usually is when he's about to leave a team. Just doesn't try. He might be about to leave this team as well, but at least he's trying at the very least. But I think the way he's just sort of adapted his playing style towards the team has really impressed me because we're obviously kind of thinking of James Harden as the heavy isolation usage guy. Doesn't really play into like at the benefit of his other teammates. It's usually about him, and then he'll dish it out. Whereas I think the first couple of games there did seem to be a few chemistry issues between the two. He had an injury, came back, and then they've just merged together so well ever since. I'm not sure if he still leads the league in assists per game. If not, it's pretty close. Yeah. I knew it was between sort of him, Tyrese Halliburton, something like that. And there has just been stretches of the season where he has been, well, where the Sixers have been one of the probably the best team in the NBA. I think for large portions of early this calendar year, they had an impressive sort of like 15-game run and stuff like that. And I find those just a bit more memorable and impressive than I found Booker games. And like Lewis said, I'm kind of happy with either of these two. But I feel like Devin Booker's season's kind of fallen by the wayside in comparison to James Harden's. I'm kind of doing this, like I said earlier on, about seasons I will remember, and I will remember this James Harden season as a bit more of like a return to form for him and a bit of an adaptation in his playing style.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is I think all of us would have the Suns as a potential favourite to win win it all this year. And if they do end up winning it and they haven't got a single player in any of the All NBA teams,
it's a regular season. It's a regular season award at the end of the day, though. And I know that he's been good in the regular season. I'm not saying he's not, but
the last thing I'd say as well is talk about Devin Booker's season maybe falling by the wayside. It is his career high in points for the regular season. So
yeah, no.
Even while it might be a bit under the radar, I still think he's done more than enough to get some recognition. But I'll go back to it again. Has Jalen Brunson done enough to get some recognition? Of course he has, but he's missing out. So Ja Morant even's missing out. I know that his season's been marred by some things, but at the start of the year he was absolutely electric. So it is incredible how many players have played to a level that you would say is all NBA standard.
So if I'm going off of who I'm going to pick now between the two of them, the more I sort of weigh up and sort of go off the both of them, one of them is standing out more to me in the regular season than the other. And it is indeed the honey bun, James Harden. That's where I'm going to run for it on. It's primarily as well, not just sort of the assists. Like Louis mentioned before, I do remember more James Harden games than Devin Booker's going across the season. The thing that is to note as well, neither of these would be eligible next year because they've not played the minimum amount of games. So that's just one thing to point out how difficult it's going to be maybe next year, and also avoid sort of guys resting when they don't need to rest and so on and so forth. But just primarily the stat line, I think, is more in favour of James Harden. They have been the better team this regular season. I know that the Suns will be a better team come the playoffs time. I don't debate that. But I think if we're looking at it like this, if one of them was to miss out more, I think it would be more agreed for James Harden to miss out than it would for Devin Booker to miss out. And that's primarily also just because of how stacked the guard position is this year, like you said, Lewis, in terms of who's going to miss out. But James Harden is going to rock in at the second spot for us.
I had to make a really
the two forwards
pitch there to the Philadelphia 76ers fan.
I was going to say, can't believe George picked the Phillies player.
No, it genuinely, all bias aside from it, if I look at the two seasons, I do think James Harden has got the edge over Devin Booker in the regular season for it. I do think he has. Anyway, the two forward positions that we've got now to round off our third team and also all of our All-NBA selections. Lewis Howard, I'm going to you. Give me one of them first. Give me one of them.
Can you go to someone else first? Because I'm actually stuck on this one.
All right, Louis laid back.
I'll say one. Good. Jimmy Butler's a lot, obviously. So we'll put Jimmy Butler in because after that, it's like KD hasn't really played enough games. LeBron hasn't really played enough games. Kawhi hasn't played that many games either. So even he's, a tough one. So I'll like to hear what you two say for the last one because I'm a bit stumped really.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Jimmy Butler anyway. So
Yeah. I mean, I had him in my second team. I had Jaylen Brown in my third team, so that kind of works out well anyway. My other pick for forward is actually Jaren Jackson Jr. In my head, I think he should be Defensive Player of the Year. I know I mentioned Brook Lopez earlier on, but I think overall they've had a rough season. The Grizzlies, obviously, like you said, Ja Morant's off the court stuff. I think largely, I mean, there was a team meeting that they had about off the court issues. I'm not sure if that was just directly about Ja Morant or if it was like a collective type of issue. So they've had an up and down season. They had a really bad stretch. They had a really good stretch to start the season. I think they were like 30 and single digit losses, something like that. It was pretty ridiculous. And he kind of came in a little bit late. Steven Adams has obviously had a lot of time out with injury, and I feel like he's kind of took on the weight of a lot of defensive responsibility. He obviously leads the league in blocks per game. How much stock you put into that particular stat when it comes to him? I listened to an interview with him actually, and he talked about how he doesn't understand that type of criticism, but that's another debate for another day, I guess. And when Ja was out, not for very long, admittedly, with his suspension and other off the court activities he had to partake in legally, I feel like he kind of really burdened some more offensive load as well, which is what I've wanted to see from him a little bit more aggression, a little bit more shot making ability, shot creation ability as well. So I think he's in deserve of some recognition here. If we're not, LeBron James was definitely within my reasoning. I think it's kind of the same thing as KD, unfortunately for him, but he's obviously had a memorable season because he broke the scoring record, and the Lakers are going to make the playoffs, and everyone's really happy. So that's nice. What are the other options really? I mean, you could maybe make a Siakam case, I guess. I wouldn't because I just don't think that team's been good enough this season. Like Mobley's been okay at points. So I'm not too sure who else could really go in here. I'm not sure if you two have anyone in mind.
No, that's why I deferred to
Yeah.
you because I just don't know. If we think because I would obviously before we had this conversation in the podcast, I had KD in my second team, and I would have LeBron in if we didn't decide. The games are a massive factor, and if we don't think someone's played the games almost like the threshold they want to bring in, then we're not going to include them because if that wasn't the case, then LeBron would definitely be in, KD would definitely be in, even Kawhi would have a shout. So, but yeah, I think I like the Jaren Jackson Jr. take. I don't really think there's a ton that stands out. Like maybe you could go to the Pelicans, pick one of them, but I don't know. I think Jaren Jackson's a decent shout. Grizzlies have got no one in at the moment. They're the second seed in the West. He is it's either going to be him or Brook Lopez for Defensive Player of the Year. It's so close between them two. Obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr. is leading the league in blocks, but Brook Lopez isn't too far behind. If you look at the teams as a whole and their defensive rating, it's like a hair between the two of them. They're, I think, both in the top three best defensive teams in the NBA. So if you want to give Jaren Jackson a shout, I'm all right with
that. Well, I mean, not to sort of put a downer on the fires, Jaren Jackson Jr. was my pick. So I didn't think either of you were going to pick him. So that kind of goes for it of who's going to take that final slot. There was something I was going to mention that I could maybe, I don't know how sort of dubious it would be if we put Sabonis as the other forward and then moved into, have I lost connection here? I might have lost connection. Oh no, I'm here. If we move Sabonis into the other forward slot and had Bam Adebayo in, I could maybe see that. But I do think Sabonis is a centre. And if we're going to go off it on that manner, I also think it would be harsh to leave Jaren Jackson Jr. out of it. I think I'd have him over an Adebayo, but I can see an argument where you could have both of them in there. But I think that it would be bad if no one from the Grizzlies is representative across these teams. I don't think Ja Morant makes the top 6 guards this season. And I do think Jaren Jackson Jr. is the Defensive Player of the Year. So that sort of then molds his argument to me as why he should be in that last spot there.
Well, that's that settled then.
Yeah, that was a bit anticlimactic. I thought we was going to have some big final debate and it would be like some boss battle that we'd have. But
I was ready for a 20-minute Siakam debate. Personally, I had all the notes.
I think Siakam's Siakam's main case, he's played like 70 games this year. Like he has played a lot and he's been good, but the Raptors in general just aren't. I wouldn't say they've been terrible, but they have been disappointing as to what people thought they were probably going to be this year, is what I'd say.
Yeah, and like I think there's just like a lot of unrest around that team. I mean, half of them are up for trades before at the trade deadline, so that should explain it as well. But I mean, you just mentioned about how many games played. Julius Randle's played 77 games. Probably going to play all 82 games, which is another insane stat. Durability is
Well,
mad on that one. So
I think he's out.
Bridges,
he rolled his ankle. He's out.
Yeah, Mikal Bridges, because of the trade, obviously, he's going to play 83 games this season. Or if he plays every game, because he's on. Is it every game that since he's been in the NBA he's played? I can't remember. I think that's the case.
I think he's on like
crazy.
I saw it. I saw he's played like 380 straight games or something like that, even going back to some of his older days. I think it's something like that.
Yeah, but I think he might play 83 games. He's obviously one more than you can actually play as a whole because of the trade. So it's nice to give a nod to people that I think I've said not about 20 times this podcast to people that are actually playing every game.
The one other person that I had as sort of my other, if it was, I thought. So Jaren Jackson Jr. was my pick for that last slot. I did think that there might have been some Lauri Markkanen shouts, and I could maybe have foreseen them as well, because Lauri Markkanen has been good, but I just don't think the Jazz have been good enough in comparison. That's when then you go on to the sort of the team bias on it and how well Memphis have been in comparison to the Jazz. But the Jazz have been better than what people thought they were going to be as well, is what I will say. That this was a season where everyone was like, oh, the Jazz are just writing it off. And they are in the play-in race. I don't think they'll make it, but they are in the play-in race. So it's it's a case of it from that manner.
I completely forgot about Markkanen, I'll be honest. He's definitely a shout you could put in there. But yeah, Jaren Jackson's fine. And I will say as well, another player that we haven't even mentioned that is low-key actually having a very good season is Kyrie, even though, you know, you want to talk about all the narratives that have been going on with him this year. It's crazy. But on the actual basketball court, he's been playing very well. So I wouldn't have him in, but I'll give him a little shout.
Yeah,
there's so many people there's so many people that miss out on this thing. Like Anthony Edwards has been in regards to when Rudy Gobert and Cat have been sort of alternative with their issues. Anthony Edwards has had so many sort of 30+ point nights this season. He's not even a consideration for a guard spot just because of how stacked it is. There are a lot of people that are missing out from it. But so I'll to end this up, I'll run through our teams that we've got. So our first team, we selected Luka Doncic, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid. Our second team was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph Curry, Jaylen Brown, Julius Randle, and Nikola Jokic. And to finalize it all off, our third team was De'Aaron Fox, James Harden, Jimmy Butler, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Domantas Sabonis. That is our All-NBA selections. If we have messed any of them up, let us know in the comments down below who should have made one of these teams, who should be in All-NBA if we've even messed that one up. Let us know in the comments down below. Do you guys have anything else to add before we end it off here?
No, I think I've given, even of the players that we didn't have in it, I think I've managed to rattle off most of the ones that I think deserved a little shout, even if they weren't going to make it. So,
all happy, Louis?
Yeah, all agreed. I think we're ready to put the regular season behind us now, though, and move on to some playoff basketball.
Yeah, but what we've got, it's just over a week. I think it's 8 days until the play-in tournament starts, and when the play-in starts, then that's when it starts getting really, really juicy, and we love playoff basketball around here. Anyway, make sure you hit the subscribe button, or you're following us if you're listening to this on the audio side. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, so you don't miss anything in terms of the NBA playoffs. Leave a like on this video, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace.